Alright, we've been doing these little team previews all off-season long. Hockey's almost back, and I think it's time to talk about a team that looks a little different from when we saw them last, and that has quite a few threads to pull on here for this season, as far as developing situations or just interesting things to keep an eye on. It's those Vancouver Canucks. Now, Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford had a ton of work to do this offseason. They lost two pretty big pieces in Nikita Zadorov and Elias Lindholm, but to their credit, they realized they're in their competitive window right now. They went shopping all over the lineup, big and small, and not just externally either. I know Pettersson was during the year, but that was big. Philip Roenick, Dakota Joshua, Tyler Myers, Teddy Bluger, Arturs Silovs, who's quickly becoming one of my favorite personalities in the league, all recently signed new deals with the club. The Canucks were busy trying to keep the band together while also trying to get better in order to try to make an even deeper playoff run. Whether they succeeded or not is up for debate. I personally think they did, but I also have a few question marks with this team that we're going to talk about here. But first, let's dive into the offseason acquisitions. The main one was, of course, the big Jake debrusk deal. He instantly becomes a core player here who's going to be counted on to provide top six offense. I wonder who he's going to end up on a line with, Miller or Pettersson. There seems to be an inclination towards Pettersson, and I could definitely see that working, but that's far from a guarantee at this point. Overall, adding him and Daniel Sprong to this offense, it's definitely going to spice things up a little bit, and I really don't know what we're going to see from them. Both are capable of putting up good middle six numbers, and both have plenty of offensive talent and skill. I'm really fascinated to see how that translates with a high-end player like Pettersson or Miller in the middle. I think it's going to go well. That bottom six is rock solid, and I even think guys like Garland and Joshua could fill in temporarily in top six roles and do a pretty good job. The Canucks are pretty deep at forward, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. Jonathan Lekkerimaki looks like he's going to be a star, and he's coming along nicely. Again, the team is really deep and they're trying to win a cup. Nobody's guaranteeing that he plays for the Canucks this year, but he's developing at such a good rate that it looks like there's at least a chance. Similarly, I wonder about Arshdeep Bains. He's one of my biggest wildcards for this team because if he takes a step, I think he could have a pretty sizable impact. He also just changed his number to Canucks legend Matt Sundin's number 13. I'm rooting for him. Side note, how stacked is that Canucks prospect cupboard? Lekkerimaki, Tom Willander, Arshdeep Bains, Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, Atu Ratu, and those are just the headliners. Like, things are looking good on that front. But for this year, this is where we run into my first big question mark, the decor. Hughes and Hronek is a top pair, that's rock solid, don't have to worry about that. Susie and Myers are serviceable as a second pair, but I do think that's where they'll start to miss Zadorov a little bit, and even more so when it comes to Forbort Desharnais as your everyday third pair. But I don't think they're going to be necessarily terrible. Two big physical guys who just have to hold their own as a third pair. Hughes and Hronek are going to be eating so many minutes anyways. I don't think it's this fire sale third pair that I've seen some people make it out to be. I just wonder how the back part of that decor compensates for the loss of Zadorov. Then there's the big question, the goaltending. I will say though, the last time the Canucks had goaltending questions like this, they ended up winning a series and taking the eventual Stanley Cup finalist to 7 games. Pretty good for how many people out of market were saying, oh my god, Thatcher Demko's not available and Casey DeSmith is out. What are the Canucks going to do? They did really well, and I know a whole season is different than a playoff series, but that should inspire a ton of confidence in this group knowing that they're capable of playing at a very high level and winning without their star number one goaltender for a decently extended period of time. But even still, the fact is, Thatcher Demko's status is the definition of up in the air, and although Silovs has a ton of potential, at 23 and only 9 regular season NHL games under his belt, it's a tall ask. It's certainly a question mark if you're asking him to step in and be your full-time starting NHL goalie while Demko is out. Does not mean he can't do it, but there should be a contingency plan in terms of depth at that position, and if Demko is in fact unable to go, I'm sure that's something the team's going to look at. Overall, I think this team's going to be very good, with Quinn Hughes, JT Miller, and Elias Pettersson at the heart of this team, plus some really nice pieces like Besser, Garland, Hronek. I still see them near the top of the Pacific, battling it out with Edmonton for first place in the division. I think their biggest competition in making it out of the West are the Oilers. I'd also put the Stars in that mix, and I think the Preds have an outside shot too. I'm fascinated to see Pettersson this year. First year of that new contract, when he's on top of his game, he can easily be the brightest star on this team. I'm also rooting for Brock Besser to continue recovering well from that blood clotting issue. If he's healthy and he can continue that momentum from his 40-goal season, the Canucks are laughing. Like, Quinn Hughes is now a Norris Trophy defenseman. I don't think you have to worry about him for a second. Also, Niels Höglander, he took a big step last year. What does he have in store for his 5th NHL season? There's a ton to keep an eye on in the lower mainland. Canucks fans and hockey fans in general, what piques your interest the most in regards to this team this year? For me, it's definitely Pettersson and Silovs. Let me know if you want more Canucks content. Please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. You're awesome.